Just over a month ago or so, an invitation was sent out to women all over to interview, females outside their own generation, related or inspirational, and ask a simple battery of questions to share their knowledge and insight. Here are some moments from those interviews.
They're from Canton, China.
My family is from New England. I grew up in Massachusetts. From 1620, both of my parents' families had relatives that managed to move 10 miles from Plymouth over the next 300 years. I do remember traits that are passed on that I see in my children from different relatives that I had. Things like a sense of humor, a sense of dedication, an ability to have fun and enjoy outdoor things such as sports. And I would say that our genealogy is such that probably our family, as my daughter knows it, is overwhelmingly English with a little bit of French, a bit of Scottish, and a bit of Swedish mixed in.
Originally of Cuero, Texas. My mother's family was raised around Cuero and Yorktown, Texas. It was farming communities.
So they were farmers?
Farmers. Sharecroppers too.
Okay.
Yes.
And your father, where was he from?
Some small town near San Antonio called Gillette, Texas. And his parents were also sharecroppers.
Okay. So what brought them to, how did they end up in El Campo?
They ended up in El Campo because they had been farming the land for a long time around those towns, so the land had gave out. So the farming communities had moved closer to the coast, and the dirt was a lot richer, and they could grow more things. As to where they lived around there, it had already played out. The land was gone, played out.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you ever find out how they met or when they met?
Well, actually, they were picking cotton. My mom and dad were picking cotton, and he would throw little letters at her because, you know, you weren't allowed to talk to boys or even look at them. Mm-hmm. So and then she responded to one of the letters, and then she ran off with him. She was 17, he was 33.
Woo-wee! Scandalous!
It was.
My mother's family, most of them came into America in the early 1700s, a few in the 1600s. But most of them have come in Virginia, and then they went down to the Carolinas, which makes sense because about that time an Indian trail opened up and settlers were coming down into the Carolinas. So they were in the Carolinas for a long time. On my mother's side of the family, there are three ancestors that you have that were in the Revolutionary War. And two of them on my mother's daddy's side, and then one on my mother's side. An interesting kind of side note is two of those ancestors on my mother's side joined the Revolutionary War when they were living close to Charlotte, North Carolina. And your McWhirter ancestor on your daddy's side that fought in the Revolutionary War was also living in a little town in what's now the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. So I wonder if the two families met at that time.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah. But after, in the 1800s, the families started moving from the Carolinas to Alabama when Indian Territory opened up. And my mother's side of the family were some of the first settlers into that part of Alabama. And from there, eventually into Louisiana, which is where I was born.
I didn't realize there was so much other Southern.
Yeah, a lot of, you have, the three ancestors that were in the Revolutionary War. You have a lot of ancestors that fought for the Confederacy.
My family has been living in the South for hundreds of years. So both my dad's family's been in Texas for several generations. My mom's family in Arkansas and Texas. And my dad's family moved to California during the Dust Bowl. Your grandmother is a registered member of the Choctaw tribe because she was really into following her heritage with that, and that family name is Birdsong, and it's her grandfather. Your grandmother's father's mother was 100% Choctaw, so her dad was 50%, grandma's 25%, I'm 12.5%, you're 6.25%.
Well, okay. The main ones were, of course, La Llorona, El Cucuy, La Mano Pachona.
What's La Mano Pachona?
Furry hand. Creep up and get you.
What is that? How does that start?
Well, it's supposed to be that if you were a bad kid, and you were after you went to bed, that hairy hand would come out and get you. La Mano Pachona.
Did that work on you?
I'm too inquisitive. I want to see it first. So let me see that. Let me see it. I got to see it. But the only thing that scared me was the dolls. Remember I told you my mom said they would come out at night and bite me? I still don't like dolls in the bedroom.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So everyone has their version of La Llorona. How did you hear it?
I heard it as La Llorona lived in a farm, of course, farming community, right? Out there in the middle of nowhere, and her husband had gone off. And she had 5 children, supposedly. And he went off, was supposed to work, but he was with some other woman, of course. And she found out. And so she decided, well, he don't want me, and there's nothing I can do about it because I can't go out there and work the fields or anything, not by herself. So I'm going to kill the children. So she threw them in a bayou or arroyo, And then she found out it wasn't true. He wasn't out there doing what she thought he was. It was her mind, isolation, all the children. Anyway, so he came back. And so she would roam looking for her children in the water, And when the wind would blow in March, when it blows and you can hear how, that was like Llorona calling for her children.
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking of one that was passed down from your daddy's side of the family. Your daddy's mother, her father was a doctor. And a little town doctor. In about 1919, they moved to South Texas, and he started his practice there. It was a town called Odom, which is about 20 miles from Corpus Christi. And he was treating anyone that came to his office. And one night, the Ku Klux Klan came to him and told him that he had to stop treating the Mexican-American families because they didn't want their wives and daughters to be treated by a doctor who maybe had just treated a Mexican-American person. And he told them that the close, and they said, there's a doctor in Corpus Christi that can treat him. And he said, 20 miles is a long way to go to Corpus. Many of these people are very poor and they can't get to Corpus. If this is offensive to you, you can have your family go to Corpus to a doctor, but I'm going to treat whoever comes to me to be treated. A little bit after that, he was, the doctor, Easton, was wanting to buy the drugstore in town. So he goes to the bank, and he sits at the desk that's out in the middle of the bank, and he's going to sign the papers. And the person who had the papers, gave him the papers, and he says, act like you're signing these papers, but don't sign them. This is Friday, you come back Monday, and you can sign them then. So he acted like he was signing them and left. And that night, mysteriously, the drugstore burnt down. Mm. But he hadn't signed the papers.
So your great-grandma Jewel was like a super tough Texas ranch lady, and she had a Cadillac in California that she drove around. But I know for one thing she had to take a baby calf to the veterinarian, and she just put it in her Cadillac. And I remember one time riding in her Cadillac, and she smoked all the time. She was smoking, and she threw a cigarette out the window, and it came back in through the back, and it set the back seat on fire. And she had a thermos of coffee right here, and she was driving really fast down these like country roads, and she just opened the thermos and like poured the coffee behind her and put out the fire without really looking or stopping the car.
That's pretty awesome.
I thought I was like a normal child.
Okay, that's really going back a long way. I was quiet as a child, and yet I was very talkative. I often got in trouble in school for talking too much.
As a child, I was a real tomboy.
Josephine Sanchez, the lovely Josephine Sanchez, as a child, Sanchez, as a child, was very inquisitive. And I always had to know, is it true or not? And I would dig until I found out. At the age of 7 years old or 8, I was hiding under bed listening to my mom gossip with her friends. So I knew everything. I knew everybody's dirt. That's me.
I was really smart and hung out with adults more than kids. I read all the time, and I had friends. I was popular, I guess, but I was outside of school. I think I was kind of a loner. Let's see. I started a company when I was really little because I really wanted to make money. So I think I started my company in the 4th grade, and by the 5th grade, by the 6th grade, I had made a lot of money in my little company.
That's pretty impressive.
It was called Kids Independent Development Service. Kids.
Oh, because the acronym spells out kids.
Mm-hmm. I shampooed carpets.
Very nice.
Oh, we had little tricycles we would ride around with. We played with our cat, and played in the grass, made mud pies.
And of course I lived in a little town. We didn't have television and those kinds of things. I loved to read. I was always a reader, and would find even places under a tree where I had gone to the library and gotten the books. Reading's always been very important to me. But I also like to be outdoors with friends. I love to roller skate, and I happen to live in a very hilly neighborhood, so we could go up and down the hills and around the circles and get lots of scraped knees. We'd ride a bike. I always like to be with friends, but I also like times of being quiet. And that's pretty much true today. I think I still have those two compulsions, to be with people and to have times of being quiet. I like to go to the picture show, we called it then, which was about the only entertainment in town you could go to. It was just a very, very typical small town childhood.
I like to do all sorts of outside things. I played sports in the neighborhood. I played tennis. I swam. Anything that I could do. Baseball was probably one of my favorite things. Tennis, croquet. I was a very active child, always taking journeys on my bike, that kind of thing.
That's just me.
Yeah. Still.
I don't gossip anymore.
Well, you like to hear it, though. You know, you like to hear a good story. Okay, and what did you do for fun as a child?
We played with boxes, marbles, tops, tires, you know, throw the tires around, backyard swing, you know, regular swinging at a tree, and my dad used to make swings and sell them, so we had a swing on the porch or two, and basically that was it. We didn't have a television, we had no radio, because that's where singings couldn't happen. So going to church on Sunday and Saturday, that was way up there because we got to have chocolate and nice sweets and talk to our friends.
So church was a big social...
Yes.
A big social outlet.
That's when we were younger. That's before Dad decided to be a macho man and run around, and after that we went to the dances.
I like to ride my bike around the neighborhood. You know, being a kid was different when we were kids than when you were a kid because we were just out unsupervised until dinner time. Like, everybody I knew was just out in the neighborhood. We were just out in the neighborhood. So I ride my bike around the neighborhood or hang out with people, reading, drawing. We got a VCR, which was pretty exciting in like the 4th or 5th grade, and so I would tape music videos off TV so I could watch them over again. I used to memorize commercials. For a while I could like repeat any commercial. Wow. I was like swimming, going to the beach.
On a blind date.
We actually met at a church here in Houston. He was
Which
working
church?
here.
St. Anne's?
No, St. Paul's Methodist.
St. Paul's.
St. Paul's Methodist.
And he was working there, you said?
Yeah, he was an attorney with the government here in naturalization.
Oh.
And from Mississippi, but we didn't know each other in Mississippi. And so that is where we met.
Oh, wonderful. Well, he's a great guy.
It was in college. I was a sophomore, and he was a senior. And it was September, 7 days after my 19th birthday. So I was 19 years and 7 days old. There was a get acquainted dance that was being held outside in a parking lot close to some of the girls' dorms. So a lot of the girls in the dorm were going to go to the dance, but I decided that I was going to be a good girl and I was going to study because there was going to be a pop test the next day in biology. I knew that that was going to happen, so I was going to study. So everyone left for the dance, and I'm studying, and the air conditioner broke. So we had to open the windows, and I could hear the music. So I went into the next room, and one of the other girls that was studying, I said, let's go to the dance. So we went to the dance, and was standing around, and boys would come up and ask me to dance, and I would dance with them and then go back to my friends. But then your daddy came up and asked me to dance. And then he asked me to dance the next dance, and the next dance, and the next dance. And until finally he asked if I'd like to have a Coke. So we went to a little place, and he bought me a Coke, and then walked me back to the dorm, and kissed me goodnight. And he was such a good kisser. I knew he was very experienced. Later I found out that I was one of the first girls he had ever dated.
Aww.
Because when he was 12, 14, his somewhere around there, his daddy died. And he had to go to work to save money to go to college. And he didn't have time for dating. But just as the senior year started, he had figured out his finances, and he realized he was going to have enough to finish school. And there was going to be a little bit left over. And he decided that he would start dating. And luckily, I got him right in September.
Which one? You want me to tell you how I met your dad or how I met Raymond?
How do you meet my dad?
Okay. I met your dad at a dance.
That's it.
I met your dad because our mutual friend had a crush on him, and she was too shy to go talk to him by herself, so she had me go with her.
Bad friend.
He invited me to a picnic. We went on a picnic.